Welcome to this episode of the Harpreet Singh Show. In today's segment, we'll talk to Catherine Sash. She's a well-known immigration lawyer, and she takes up such cases where many a times people are not ready to venture into those type of cases. Today, we're going to talk about a very important issue because now, as the immigration system is changing, we are finding that the government is welcoming lots of youngsters, and especially the students. Those students who come over here for education, what are the opportunities available for them? Can they work? Do they need to have some permit to work? And what other things have been brought about for them? Let's know from Catherine Sash. Welcome to the program.
Welcome, Harpreet.
So today let's talk about the students, because once the students come over here and they are coming here for education, and their basic purpose is to get education, but also many times they want to work also, because education is very expensive for them, and they want to just kind of lighten up the burden by working somewhere. So what kind of opportunities are available for them?
There's probably no program that has undergone as much transformation as the student program in Canada over recent years. Several years ago, I was on a trade mission to China, and you couldn't get, even though the students were wanting to come and the universities wanted them, they wouldn't approve visas for them because it was a temporary program.
Right.
And when you were coming for a temporary purpose, you had to demonstrate that you weren't also seeking to come for a permanent process. That has all shifted now with dual intent, and the government has recognized that those people who come to study in Canada make excellent immigrants, so they're actually seeking them out.
Okay.
Students couldn't work before unless they worked at the colleges or universities that they were studying at. Now we have off-campus work permits. They've increased postgraduate work permits from 1 year to 3 years, and there are several different mechanisms whereby students can become permanent residents after they complete their studies in Canada. So things have totally shifted, and students are desired by Canada Immigration to come to Canada.
So once they want to work, do they have to tell that intent at the time when they're applying, or once they land in Canada?
You know, it's actually implied that if you are going to school, you are eligible to work. It's up to you to go through that process.
Okay.
I think that it's advisable that when you're applying as a student, you should indicate that, you know, I may want to stay permanently. I'm going to figure that out when I'm there. But a student visa does have a path to permanent residence, so the rejection rates for student applications have gone down.
Okay.
There is an off-campus work permit that allows a student to work while they're going to school, and there is a postgraduate work permit that allows students to go to school afterwards. It all depends on the place that you are studying at and the length of time that you are studying for. The first thing that I would tell you is to be eligible for an off-campus work permit, to be able to work while you're going to school, you need to go to a publicly funded college or university.
Okay.
Not all schools are eligible for this option. Private schools often are not eligible for it.
Okay.
And on the Canada Immigration website, it lists the eligible institutions that you can get an off-campus work permit for if you are going to school.
Right.
And in some schools, it depends on the specific program. So if this is something you want to do, you need to know that before you go.
Okay.
You must go to school full-time for a minimum of 6 months. You are eligible to apply for this work permit after you've completed 6 months of full-time study. And Canada Immigration is pretty good about issuing those work permits quickly.
Right.
So if you're going to school for a 1-year program, you go to school for 6 months, and then you can go to school for a few months after, and after you graduate with your 1-year certificate, you can get a 1-year postgraduate work permit.
Okay.
If you go to a 2-year diploma program or a 4-year degree program, when you complete that program, you're eligible for a 3-year postgraduate work permit.
Okay.
And you can work for up to 18 months or longer if you're in a 2-year diploma program.
Right.
The other thing that's nice about the off-campus work permit program, you're only allowed to work 20 hours a week while you're going to school.
Okay.
But during the school breaks or the Christmas breaks, you can work full-time. So it gives students a lot of opportunities to get Canadian work experience
Right.
While they're going to school, to help out with finances while they're here in Canada,
Right.
and then to connect with an employer after they graduate, which will lead to permanent resident options.
Right. And Catherine, when you say off-campus work permit, in that they can go and do work in any place,
Any
or
place.
is it specified?
No, it's an open work permit, and they
Okay.
can go and work anywhere.
Okay.
And it does not have to be related to their field of study. There used to be this requirement that your
Right.
work, that your job after you graduated had to be related to your field of study. They're much, much more flexible, largely because there's so many low-skilled occupations in Canada that need experience.
Right.
And they want students to get work experience so that they can transition to permanent residence.
After this work permit and they have studied here, then they can also apply for PR also?
Yes, we have postgraduate. There are 3 different ways that they can get permanent resident status.
Okay.
The Canadian Experience Class. Most of the provincial nominee programs have student programs, and the Federal Skilled Worker Class has a program for PhD students that they can
Right.
apply for permanent residence after they graduate from a PhD program. But the most common are the PNP programs and the Canadian Experience Class programs.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about now the criteria. Anybody who wants to come from India, Pakistan, or any other South Asian country for studies, so what criteria has to be met?
Well, they're going to have to get a letter of acceptance from an educational institution here in Canada.
Right.
So the starting ground isn't Canada immigration criteria, it's the educational institution
Right.
criteria. And usually there's an education or a language requirement. So you're going to have language proficiency, you're going to have a test result that meets what their standard is. And different schools have different entrance requirements for language proficiency. Some schools will accept you into whatever the program of study is, but if your language skills aren't good enough, they'll make you take a language courses at their school for a year before
Okay.
you begin your program. And Canada Immigration will approve that. So letter of acceptance, number 1. You need to show that you have the finances to be able to support your stay in Canada while you're going to school.
Right.
So you've got to pay for the tuition, which is more expensive than what Canadians pay for tuition, and you have to have money to cover for your living expenses while you're here.
Right.
I generally recommend that students have a study plan. They tell us why they're coming here. That
Right.
how is this education going to fit overall into their lives?
Also, one more thing, when they have to apply for PR, do they have to go back once their study permit is expired, or they can stay, while staying here, they can apply for PR?
So long as they are on valid status, and the postgraduate work permit is quite a long time. Usually it's people are here for a 3-year period of time.
Right.
If you've got 3 years of work and you work for 1 year, after 1 year of work experience in Canada, you now meet the Canadian Experience Class criteria, and you still have 2 years to be able to work in Canada while your PR is processed. So there
Okay.
are programs to stay.
Right.
If I had to say anything to students, and I've seen some very, very sad cases, several of them with Indian students, it's that while the off-campus work permit is there, they don't apply for it.
Okay.
And they just go and work illegally while they are here going to school.
Right.
That is such a bad idea. And I remember 2 young men in particular were studying at publicly funded schools, so they would have been eligible for the off-campus work permit. They would have
Right.
been eligible for the postgraduate work permit. Instead, they've got exclusion orders. They've had to go back to India. They are never coming back to Canada.
Right.
And yet they had this wonderful opportunity. So use the opportunities that are available in the program itself
Right.
through the off-campus work permit. You need to know that you're going to be studying full time for 6 months, but after 6 months, you're going to have these opportunities.
Right, and when it is legal, why not to
Yeah.
use the legal way, and
That's
instead
the
of, as you
message
said.
that's coming from this government. You've got to
Absolutely.
do things the proper way.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Harpreet.
ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਥਰੀਨ ਸੈਸ ਨੇ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ ਬੜੀ ਹੀ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਰੱਖਦੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ। ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਫੰਡਡ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀਜ਼ ਜਾਂ ਕਾਲਜਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੀਂ ਸੁਵਿਧਾ ਬਣਾਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਫ ਕੈਂਪਸ ਕੰਮ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ। ਇਲੀਗਲੀ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਲੀਗਲ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਪੀਆਰ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਵੀ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕੈਥਰੀਨ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਐਸੇ ਵੀ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਆਏ ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਬੱਚੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਇਲੀਗਲ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਪਸ ਆਪਣੇ ਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ 'ਚ ਭੇਜਣਾ ਪਿਆ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਦੱਸ ਦਿਓ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿ ਬੱਚੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੀਗਲ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹ ਬਾਹਰ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਏਗਾ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਵਾਸਤੇ।